Welcome to System 2.
Have you ever found yourself in a political conversation and it just feels impossible? Like you're not just disagreeing, but speaking a completely different language? Well, today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at the hidden architecture of our political minds, the ancient, deep programming that's running the show. And that really brings us to the biggest question of our time, doesn't it? How can people who are intelligent, who are decent, who you might even love, look at the exact same set of facts and come to wildly different conclusions? It's more than just policy. It feels personal. We're here to figure out why. So what even is a political ideology? It's definitely not just a list of things you believe. A better way to think about it is like your brain's operating system. It's this powerful, mostly unconscious shortcut that helps you make sense of a really chaotic world. It's your internal compass, instantly telling you what feels right, what feels wrong, and what feels fair. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start way back with our evolutionary roots as the political animal. Then we'll look at the social toolkit we developed to survive, the mental filters that shape our reality, and the gut feelings that drive our morality. And finally, we'll look at what actual brain scans are telling us and what it all means for bridging our divides. Let's dive in. First things first. To really understand our modern political software, you have to look at the ancient hardware it's running on. So let's turn back the clock, way back, to the evolutionary pressures that literally sculpted the human brain. The biologist Richard Dawkins famously pointed out this huge paradox. At a fundamental level, our genes are selfish. Their only goal is to survive and get copied. So, if that's the case, how on earth did we become a species capable of these incredible feats of cooperation and altruism? It's a massive puzzle, and it's right at the heart of our political nature. To solve that puzzle, you have to understand this concept, the environment of evolutionary adaptedness, or EEA. Basically, it's the world our minds were built for, a world of small hunter-gatherer groups where survival was a daily struggle. And here's the kicker. We might be walking around with smartphones in 2024, but we're doing it with Stone Age software running in our heads. So how did we get from selfish genes to building cities and societies? Well, evolution had to outfit us with a pretty remarkable social toolkit, a whole set of psychological tricks and adaptations for navigating the super complex world of group living. Which brings us right back to that central question. Why would you ever help somebody else, especially if it costs you something? The answer, weirdly enough, can be found in the cold, hard logic of game theory. Okay, look at the famous prisoner's dilemma. It shows us that if you only interact with someone once, the most rational choice is always to betray them. But that's not how human life works, is it? We live in communities. We see the same people over and over again. And when the game is repeated, a whole new set of rules for cooperation starts to make sense. And this is where the power of reciprocity comes in. It starts simple. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But humans took it to a whole new level with a system built on reputation. I help you, and someone else sees it. And now they think I'm a good cooperator, so they're more likely to help me later. And to make sure the system works, we develop this deep, powerful urge to punish cheaters, even if it costs us something to do it. And this toolkit, this is the bedrock of all human society. We are wired for trust. We are obsessed with reputation. I mean, that's what gossip is. We are constantly keeping a running tally of who owes what to whom. And this whole system just works better when we have a clear sense of who is us and who is them. These are the ancient building blocks of our modern political world. Okay, so this ancient social toolkit is amazing, and this is a huge but, it's not perfect. It comes with a bunch of built-in bugs and biases that literally act as a partisan filter on reality itself. You gotta remember, our brains didn't evolve for objective truth. They evolved for survival inside our social group. Our minds are masters of the mental shortcut. I mean, take confirmation bias. That's your brain's built-in echo chamber. It actively seeks out info that proves you're right and ignores the rest. Then there's loss aversion, which makes the pain of losing something feel twice as strong as the pleasure of gaining it. That's why arguments about protecting what we have are so powerful. And maybe the most dangerous one today, false polarization, which makes us see our opponents as these extreme, unified villains when the reality is usually much more complicated. And running underneath all of this is what's called the smoke detector principle. Just think about it for a sec. You would much rather have a smoke alarm that goes off when you burn toast than one that fails to go off during a real fire, right? The cost of a false alarm is just annoyance. The cost of a missed threat is death. Our brains are built the same way. They're designed to be a little anxious, to overreact to potential dangers, because that was the safest bet for survival.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. It turns out these psychological factory settings aren't the same for everyone. A ton of research shows that, on average, people who lean conservative have a more sensitive smoke detector, a stronger physical reaction to threats. They also tend to prefer order, tradition, and strong group bonds. On the flip side, folks who lean liberal tend, again, on average, to be more open to new things and more comfortable with ambiguity. Now, this is critical. These are not character flaws. They're different, equally valid survival strategies that evolution kept in the gene pool. So these different psychological settings don't just affect how we think. They go much deeper. They shape how we feel. They are the very source of our deepest moral intuitions, those powerful gut feelings that fuel our political passions and, well, create our tribes. You know, for most of history, we thought morality was all about high-level rational thought. But modern psychology has totally flipped that script. We now know that our moral judgments are usually born in a flash, a gut feeling, and our brilliant, rational mind, its job is to act like a press secretary, coming up with a plausible story after the fact to justify the feeling we already had. We're not judges. We're lawyers defending our own gut instincts. A great way to think about this is moral foundations theory. It suggests we have at least 5 different moral taste buds, each designed to solve an old evolutionary problem. Now, everyone values care and fairness, but research shows that conservatives tend to have a broader moral palette. They also place a really strong emphasis on loyalty to the group, respect for authority, and a sense of sanctity or purity. Liberals, on the other hand, tend to focus their moral energy really intensely on care and fairness, and often apply those ideas to all of humanity, not just their in-group.
Just look at the idea of fairness. It's a perfect example. For many on the left, fairness is about equality and social justice, making sure everyone has a similar outcome. For many on the right, fairness is about proportionality. You get what you put in, and cheaters shouldn't get ahead. It's the same word, the same moral foundation, but 2 completely different political worlds spring out of it.
Okay, so we've covered the evolutionary history and the deep psychology of our political divides. But can we actually see any of this in the physical brain itself? Well, thanks to modern neuroscience, the answer is a pretty shocking yes.
So in this one landmark study, researchers put people into fMRI brain scanners and just had them do a bunch of different tasks. Here's the important part. None of the tasks were political. They weren't asked about policy. They were just, looking at pictures, solving little puzzles, even just resting quietly. And the results were just, wow. What they found was that just by looking at the patterns of how different parts of the brain were talking to each other, a computer could predict a person's political ideology with incredible accuracy. In fact, your brain's unique wiring pattern was a better predictor of your politics than things like your income or your level of education. Just let that sink in for a second. So, this tells us that our political leanings aren't just some casual opinion. They seem to be etched into the very fabric of our brain's connectivity. They're reflected in these deep neural networks that manage how we feel empathy, how we process rewards, how we guess what other people are thinking. Our politics, in a very real way, reflect who we are at a fundamental neurobiological level. So what on earth do we do with this information? I mean, it's powerful, maybe even a little unsettling. We've seen that our political divides have these incredibly deep roots. So what does that mean for us today in our polarized world? The first question that pops up is, are we just doomed by our biology? And the answer is a clear and resounding no. Our genes and our brains might write the first draft of our political selves, but our life experiences, our culture, and our conscious choices, they're the editors. We get to write the final story. Maybe the most valuable thing this research gives us is a new, more generous way to look at our political opponents. Instead of seeing it as a simple battle of good versus evil or right versus wrong, we can start to see it as a tension between 2 ancient and equally necessary survival strategies: the drive to protect the group and conserve what works, versus the drive to explore new possibilities and reform what's broken. You needed both to survive on the savannah, and you probably need both for a healthy society today. But here's the problem. Our Stone Age brains are now living in a social media world. Those algorithms are perfectly designed to mainline our confirmation bias. The 24/7 news cycle is a non-stop trigger for our threat detection systems. Our modern world has basically become a super stimulus for our ancient psychology. It's like pouring rocket fuel on the fires of our division. And that leaves us with a choice, doesn't it? We can keep being these unwitting puppets of our ancient programming, letting it pull us further and further apart. Or
we can use this very knowledge of our shared biology to try and build some bridges, to see the other side not as evil, but just as different, and to consciously choose understanding over outrage. The future of our ability to live together might just depend on which path we choose to take.